Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our eighth seminar, Contextually Driven Affordable Housing Solutions in the Ghanaian Real Estate Market, with our guest presenter, Dr. Kenneth Donka Hiaman. As per usual, the presentation will be for about 40 to 45 minutes. Thereafter, attendees will be given an opportunity to basically pose questions to our guest presenter, and then we'll wrap up. However, before we start and get into the meat of the matter, I'll just ask that you first join me in prayer, and then after doing so, um, we can then have the introduction of our presenter by today's host, Mr. Jevon Reed. So, dear righteous and heavenly Father, we thank you for life. We thank you for the opportunity to be here. We thank you for our presenter. And we thank you for the knowledge that will be gained here as well as the knowledge that will be shared. I pray that what it is that is presented to us will be filling to us academically, that it is something that we will all benefit from, and we will essentially leave here being more empowered, more knowledgeable about emerging real estate markets, and specifically what kind of innovative approaches can be used to make housing more affordable for a larger proportion of our society. All these mercies we ask in your name. Amen. At this time, I will hand over to Mr. Jevon Reed, who will do the biography on Dr. Donka Hiaman. Jevon?
Thank you, Miss Beal. Good afternoon to our special invited guests. Good afternoon, colleagues of the Real Estate Management and Valuation Student Society. The task is mine to introduce our presenter, Dr. Kenneth Donka Hiaman. Joining us today from Ghana is a Commonwealth scholar, the holder of a Bachelor of Science in Land Economy with first-class honors from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, a Master of Philosophy in Planning Growth and Regeneration from the University of Cambridge, and a PhD in Real Estate and Planning at the University of Reading, where he specialized in real estate finance and real estate economics. While pursuing doctoral studies at the University of Reading, Dr. Donka Hiaman taught undergraduate and postgraduate modules in real estate investment appraisal, real estate finance, and real estate economics. In executing this role, he helps students to understand investment banking, corporate and project finance decision science, investment analysis, financial modeling, as well as fixed income and equity analysis. Since completing his doctoral journey, Dr. Donka Hiaman has become a lecturer at his undergraduate alma mater and recently served as a housing specialist consultant at the World Bank on the Greater Accra Resilience and Integrated Development Project. He has also published extensively on real estate mortgage finance in emerging markets in top-ranking peer-reviewed journals such as Habitat International, the International Journal of Housing Markets and Analysis, and the Journal of Economics and Sustainable Development, to name a few. In addition, our presenter currently serves as the Executive Secretary of the construction sector of the Association of Ghana Industries. In this capacity, Kenneth leads industry-relevant research in farm property and construction policies and manages advocacy programs aimed at improving the property and construction business environment in Ghana. Dr. Donka Hiaman also oversees the Construction Industry Development Forum of Ghana and coordinates the International Finance Corporation Excellence in Design for Greater Efficiencies, known as EDGE, a program at the Association of Ghana Industries level. My fellow students, lecturers, and professional values, it is with pleasure that I now hand over to our presenter for today, Dr. Kenneth Donka Hiaman. Welcome, Dr. Hiaman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reed, for the generous introduction. It's a privilege to present to you on affordable housing generally from the Ghanaian perspective. I think I'll thank Tina for the invitation, and it's my hope that at the end of the day, we would all learn one or two things from the presentation I'm about doing. Okay, so I'll share my slides and then we can begin. Okay. Yeah, so my presentation will largely touch on three main areas. I'll talk a little bit about Ghana, and then I'll then move on to look at the housing situation in Ghana, and then I'll look at some affordable housing initiatives in Ghana. Okay, so let's start. So Ghana is a country in West Africa, as you can see. I've shaded that in red in the map of Africa. It is a middle income country, and its current GDP is about $66 billion. It has a GDP per capita of about $2,202. Its capital city is Accra, or Accra, as most people will pronounce it. It has a total population of about 30 million, and its population is growing currently at about 3.3% annually. Unemployment in Ghana is just about 2.4%. And in terms of the Gini coefficient, which is a measure of inequality, Ghana scores about 43.5%. Yeah, so basically this is just a little information about Ghana. Indeed, Ghana is one of the most peaceful countries in Africa, and was the first country to gain independence within the sub-Saharan African region. Yeah, so let's look at a little bit about the housing statistics of Ghana. So somewhere in 1960, the total number of houses in Ghana was just about 636,000. Fast forward 2010, this number is now about 3,392,000. And between the period 2000 and 2010, the number of houses has been increasing at a rate of 4.4%. And on average, the number of persons per house is about 7.3 people. In terms of housing tenure in Ghana, there are different types of houses, really, or there are different types of dwellings we can look at. We can have ownership, or we have ownership of property. There are people who rent property, and there are people who also live rent-free. And there are just a few people who actually perch or squat. Yeah, and from this table, you can see that to a large extent, when you look at urban areas, renting is the predominant form of housing tenure. So as of 2014, it was estimated in the Ghana Living Standard Survey 6 that about 40% of Ghanaians living in the urban areas were renting, and just about 32.8 were owned the houses they lived in. And in the rural areas, you have an overwhelming 65.5% of the people owning the houses they live in, and just a few renting. Yeah, so basically this shows that within the urban areas where there's a lot of economic pressure and house prices are rising, given the low levels of income, a lot of people can only afford to rent in these areas. Now, in terms of house price structure, focusing on developer-built houses, a study in 2015 based on a sample of 100 real estate developers provided some estimates of the prices of developer-built houses in Ghana. So the survey showed that most of the houses constituting about 48% were priced over and above $250,000, and just about 19% of them were less than $75,000. Now, fast forward 2019, I extended that survey by looking at 100 real estate developers, and it turned out that the median asking house price for these houses that are developed by these developers is about $145,000. The minimum house price, asking price you find on the market is about $25,000. And this is only supplied by just one developer on a very limited scale. And also very far away from the city center. Now, in terms of dwelling types, there are many types of houses in Ghana. The most popular one is what we refer to as the compound housing unit. So I've basically demonstrated the compound housing unit with this plan up here. As you can see, it's actually a big house with a courtyard in between, with all the rooms opening into the courtyard, as you would see. Usually it's a type of house that we'll call the family type of house in Ghana. And this in 2014 constituted about 51.3% of the different types of houses we have in Ghana. The second most popular type of housing or house that we have in Ghana is what we refer to as the detached house or the detached housing. And currently it constitutes about 16.4% in Ghana. A typical picture of the detached house is what I've shown below the plan I talked about earlier. Now, like many developing countries, Ghana has problems with data, especially data on housing. And so a number of studies have attempted to estimate the housing need in Ghana. And increasingly, we find inconsistencies in the estimates that are made. But somewhere in 2015, the most recent study by the government of Ghana estimated that currently there's a housing deficit, or as of the year 2020, there was going to be a housing deficit of about 5.7 million rooms. Now, if you pick the average size of households in Ghana, which is about 4.3 people in a house, then we can estimate that housing deficit in Ghana is just about 1.3 million houses. And it is estimated that on an annual basis, 133,000 units of houses will be needed to meet this housing deficit. However, in terms of supply, only 25,000 is supplied. So there is a huge catch up to be done in terms of the number of houses that are needed to be supplied annually to be able to resolve the housing deficit. Now, this slide actually gives us some data on different types of properties that are supplied by the formal real estate developers in Ghana. And here I focus on the different house prices. Indeed, I have actually selected these few real estate developers and projects because these are about some of the cheapest you find in the market. And on average, what they supply is well above 50. Most of what they supply is well above $50,000. Now, we collected this data in 2019 when I worked at the World Bank as a housing specialist. And it was the case that one of the conclusions we drew from this exercise was that houses in Ghana, especially the formal houses supplied by the developers, is only affordable to just the top income decile. Just about the top 10% of Ghanaians can afford these type of houses. And for most of them, there is poor connectivity in terms of location and also infrastructure. Now, a little bit of detail on affordability. So somewhere in 2017, there was a study conducted by one Safo and Co. And they estimated that in Ghana, if you consider house costs against incomes, using average house costs and average incomes, they estimated that Ghanaians, or the average Ghanaian, can afford a house that cost a maximum of $16,809. Just $16,809. That is looking at a house cost to income ratio of 1:3. Now, if you increase the ratio to 4, the maximum house price the average Ghanaian can afford is about $22,412 US. And then if you increase the ratio to about 5, then the maximum is about just $28,000 US. And this is for people living in the urban areas. Now, when we also consider the mean house price in Ghana, and I'm using the mean house price because the estimates we have done in terms of affordability using the average, using the house cost and income is actually based on an average estimate. And so based on the earlier data I showed you, the mean house price for developer built units is priced at a whopping $187,000 US. So just by comparing what the average Ghanaian can afford and what the real estate developers are supplying currently on the market, it's quite clear that most Ghanaians cannot afford this type of unit. Okay. So this one way or the other may account for the reason why in urban areas, a lot of people tend to rent rather than own. Now, The earlier research work I cited went on further to estimate that in Ghana, just about 5% of the people can afford the cheapest developer-built housing unit. Just about 5% of the population. So to a large extent, about over 90% of the population cannot afford the cheapest developer-built unit, which is priced at around 25,000 US dollars. So then it is important that some form of intervention in terms of affordable housing will be provided through some kind of state intervention. Yes, and the unfortunate thing about Ghana's situation is that although house prices are very high and incomes are relatively low compared to Ghana's contemporaries within the middle income bracket, housing finance is also very difficult to come by. And by housing finance, I'm talking about mortgage finance. These are loans you would usually take from a bank to purchase a house. This chart I'm showing you is comparative mortgage finance development across different countries. Sorry, let me do something to this. Okay, excuse me, let me do this. Okay. Yes, so you can see, and we are measuring comparative mortgage finance here by looking at the ratio between the average mortgage debt, outstanding mortgage debt in the country to GDP. So basically when we express the outstanding mortgage debt of a country as a ratio or as a proportion of its GDP, that gives us an idea of the size of the mortgage market in that country, and for that matter, how well the mortgage market is developed. And unfortunately for Ghana, our mortgage market is actually less than 1% of our GDP. And so it is still nascent. What this means is that a lot of people cannot or do not have access to mortgages to buy homes. This means that most people actually use what we call sweat equity, which is their own savings accumulated over long periods of time to purchase or to build their own houses. And some academics have cited this as one of the reasons why the housing deficit in Ghana is expanding or is increasing. It's because the incremental housing process that most Ghanaians use in acquiring houses is just inefficient. It takes about 5 to 15 years for an average Ghanaian to build a house, okay? Which means that there is a need for some intervention in this space. Now, when we also look at industry loans and advances, we find that housing credit constitutes the least in terms of percentage of industry loans and advances in Ghana. And this can be shown, or this is shown by the red line in the chart below, in the chart you see. And then recent data has shown that, in fact, the mortgage debt to GDP ratio has actually declined to 0.5%. So which means that the mortgage market is not providing more and more access to many people in terms of their ability to acquire these loans to buy houses. So then the challenge in terms of supply, the fact that what is supplied, or the houses that are supplied, are actually priced at prices that are unaffordable to most Ghanaians, and also the fact that housing finance is difficult to come by means that some form of government intervention may be needed. Okay, ideally, most policy analysts would say that there is some form of inefficiency in the housing market, and a government intervention in the form of affordable housing might help many people to either acquire housing or have access to decent housing. And so I'll then start by talking about affordable housing in Ghana. So in Ghana, you'd find a definition of affordable housing in the housing policy, which was promulgated in 2015. And according to this document, affordable housing or housing, the ability of a household to spend up to 30% of its gross annual income on the rent or the purchase price of housing, where the rent or the purchase price includes applicable taxes and insurances and utilities, would actually provide us an idea of what affordable housing will look like in Ghana. And when the annual carrying cost of a house exceeds 30% of household income, then such a house would be considered unaffordable for that household. Yes, if you've studied a bit of affordable housing, or if that is an area of research interest to you, you'll find that this definition of affordable housing is quite deficient because it doesn't provide any idea of standards beyond the ratio of housing cost to income. Ideally, in other places, some basic standards in terms of the size of the house would be given, and even in terms of the quality of the construction would also be given. This means that to a large extent, anyone or most houses may be classified as affordable so far as the housing cost constitutes just, or housing cost does not exceed 30% of the price of that house, which is quite ridiculous in my opinion. So Ghana has a long history of affordable housing since 1957. So Ghana got independence in 1957, and since then, various governments have initiated various projects to supply different forms of affordable housing. And this slide gives you an idea of what we've been looking at so far. But I wouldn't concentrate on this slide or even this slide. I would want to focus more on what the current government is doing, which I think would be interesting, and also taking into account the limited time I have to present. So the most recent affordable housing projects we can find in Ghana are projects that were started between the year 2012 up to date. So somewhere in 2012, the then government initiated a project to construct 5,000 units of affordable housing. These units, taking into account the low levels of income in Ghana and the affordability levels in Ghana, was to be priced at $30,000 per unit. Now, estimate had shown that at this point in time, at 30,000, many Ghanaians could afford, because Ghana had now become a middle income country. Later on, I'll talk about this project because unfortunately for us, due to politics, these 5,000 units were reduced to just 1,500 units, even though the estimated cost of 200 million US dollars did not change. What that meant was that the initial $30,000 actually skyrocketed to $130,000 for a unit, which is obviously unaffordable to most people in Ghana. And then in fast forward 2016, the current government completed a project called the Asokore Mampo Affordable Housing Project, which was initiated 20 years ago. So Ghana, like many developing countries, also has this problem of project abandonment, where whenever there is a change in government, the incumbent government decides not to continue with the projects of its successor, the previous governments. So this particular project had been in development for, well, about 20 years. So this government came in and also decided that, okay, it would also pursue its own affordable housing projects. And so somewhere in 2019, it initiated a project called the Tema Community 22 Affordable Housing Development Project for public servants. The idea or the project was to develop 200 units, I think 204 units of housing for public servants. But then in addition to this, the government also planned to develop more houses through PPP projects. And these houses were to be priced at 25,000 US dollars, which is what many experts believe it would be affordable to the average Ghanaian. So these are the pictures of some of the projects the government initiated. So the picture you see here is the Tema Community 22 Affordable Housing Development Project. And these houses were actually developed through the government initiative called the National Mortgage and Housing Finance Initiative. So the government set up a mortgage fund, which was to provide cheap or affordable housing at concessionary rates to most public servants so that they will be able to afford this type of houses. And the government also decided to provide construction finance at concessionary rates to real estate developers, largely because developers had often complained that the cost of construction in terms of the interest rates on construction loans have been very high, which is one of the reasons why the houses they deliver are often expensive. And so at a concessionary rate of 10%, which is about 60% lower than the market mortgage rate, they were able to effectively develop these houses, which were priced at $25,000, as against the median house price of $187,000. So significantly, through the government's partnership with the private sector, it has been able to construct houses that are cheaper for the average Ghanaian. Now, this project is a project that has taken about 20 years to deliver. This is the Asokore Mampong Affordable Housing Project. Now, this project has 336 one-bedrooms, 691 two-bedrooms, and it is situated on a 50-acre plot of land. And it also has 91 blocks and 26 shops, and with complementary infrastructure and community facilities. Now, it has just been completed, and these units are going for just 99,000 Ghana cedis. And in Ghanaian terms, this is extremely cheap. The two-bedroom house, so the one-bedroom special unit is going for 142,000, and the two-bedroom is going for 182,000, whilst the three-bedroom units are going for 335,000 Ghana cedis. Now, in Ghanaian, based on the standards of living in Ghana, these prices are extremely cheap and would fall within the 25,000 affordable housing bracket we've been talking about so far. And then this is the Saglami Affordable Housing Project. This is a project that started between the year 2012 and 2016. This is the project that was planned to deliver 5,000 units of affordable housing, but the politicians eventually succeeded in reducing the units to 1,500. Unfortunately, these units are currently unaffordable, and as a result of some probe into corruption allegations, this project, which although was completed somewhere in 2016, has still not been habited. The government claims there were instances of corruption and it is probing it. And so the projects, some analysts have said, have been abandoned now, whilst the housing deficit continues to increase in Ghana. And these are examples of very old initiatives that previous governments and many years ago started. And so in this last slide, I would like to show you a 4-minute video of these affordable housing projects I've been talking about so far. Give me a second. Let me look at it again. Okay. It's my desktop. I'm trying to look for the video.
No problem, Dr. Hierman. In the meantime, I'd encourage each of us present here, if you have any questions or concerns, you could begin to formulate them.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a video. I'll play it so you can see. Sorry, I would like to know, do you hear the sound?
No, I'm not hearing. I'm not sure if it has to do with your microphone.
Okay, so
It's kind of low. Or maybe if you disconnect the microphone, maybe we might hear a sync.
sorry?
I was wondering that if did you click to share the sound as well? Sorry, or just because sometimes if you don't click to share the sound.
Okay, so let me see if I can do this.
Or if not, you'd have to remove the microphone.
Can you hear the sound?
It's low. So I was asking if you clicked to share the sound.
Sorry?
I was asking if you had clicked to share sound as well, in addition to.
Okay, so I'm in the control, but then there's no option to share the sound.
It should where you see share screen at the bottom. If you click on the up arrow, look to see if you see advanced sharing options. So like where you would click to share screen, there should be an
Yeah.
up arrow where you could see advanced sharing options. From there, you should be able, I think, to see.
It shares screen, participants.
Otherwise, you probably would have.
Okay,
You see it?
so No, I haven't. But anyway, I think the most important thing is that I want you to see the buildings,
Okay.
and I'm sure you can. You have a good picture of this project. So let me start it again. So this is the affordable housing project at Tema Community 22. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the video, but I'd like to conclude I'd like to conclude by saying that in Ghana, the government's approach to affordable housing has actually been in terms of, one, the use of subsidies, both demand side and supply side subsidies. So on the supply side, the government is providing concessionary interest rates on loans, and the government is actually providing some funds to some selected real estate developers so that they can provide at a cheaper or so that they can provide us with cheaper houses. And then on the demand side, the government is also, through the National Mortgage Housing Finance Scheme, is also providing mortgages at concessionary rates to those who qualify for these housing units. So basically, this is the how government of Ghana is approaching this idea of affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hiraman. So firstly, one of the things that I would have gathered based on observation, of course, through the inclusion of the visual you shared just now, is the fact that, both the investors and the government play a critical role in the provision of these houses. But while we may regard the access to suitable housing as a human right, you realize that the costs or the prices, the cost to construct these units are minimal, but the prices are way above market value, are way above the affordable range that these people in your country can afford. Now, I want for you to tell us, from your perspective as a housing specialist, do you think that there is more that governments can do to prevent against this?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe government, of course, the Ghanaian government can do more than it is doing. To a large extent, to be able to deliver affordable housing sustainably, you need a very good housing policy. A very clear housing policy that is action-oriented. Now, for a very long time, Ghana has pursued a piecemeal housing policy process. So, there are long periods of times when we've not actually had a housing policy. So usually governments come in without any idea or without any plans on what it wants to do. And usually they would come up with some funny projects just so that they can create opportunities for their cronies. You get it? And so for me, I believe that it starts with formulating a very clear housing policy. And based on that policy, you can then decide on what kind of activities you want to undertake. Now, what I think the government is doing in Ghana is very significant, in a sense that the government recognizes that the problem is not only demand-oriented, it is also supply-oriented. And so to be able to enable more supply of affordable housing, the government then goes in to partner with the developers, provides them with cheaper construction finance so that they can pass on the cheaper cost to the end users. Yeah, and so I believe that is very important. Now, what the government is also planning actually to deliver more of these units on a PPP basis, by looking for real estate developers who can assemble at least 100 plots of land as a basis of assessing government finance to be able to put up these units. So hopefully it's a case that perhaps in the next 5 years, we should see more of these units on the market. Now, another thing the government of Ghana is also looking at doing is also not only providing mortgages at cheaper rates, but also trying to go into the private rented market, or the government is partnering with the developers to put up facilities that can be rented out. And the government is happy to provide some advance rents to individuals who will be interested in this. And so you can see clearly that there is a certain strategy, but it needs to be clearer given the interactions I've had with those in authority.
And I am forced to agree with you as well, because examining the bit of facts you would have shared from your perspective in Ghana and comparing it to that which we know to be our Jamaican reality, I could comment and share that in Jamaica, we've had a draft national housing policy since about 2016. We have changed two administrations. Well, it is still the same administration, but perhaps with a more aggressive approach and attitude towards providing affordable housing. Like you in Ghana as well, we are challenged with an issue of supplying the market's need. For example, we need to supply approximately 10,000, or is it 13,000, my apologies. We need to supply 13,000 units annually to meet our housing demand by 2030. However, we are only capable of supplying only 5,000. Now, you spoke to having clear directives and having a clear outline as to the way forward. Wouldn't you describe the absence of same to be a challenge right across the world?
Yes, yes. It's just that some other countries are doing better than we are doing, clearly, because as I indicated earlier on, I mean, not having a housing policy in the first place means that you are directionless. You probably don't have any direction, or you don't even have any plan as to how you are going to tackle the housing deficit. You get it? Indeed, in Ghana, one of the problems I highlighted was the issue of data. So for a very long time, we've been struggling to settle on what the actual housing deficit is. You get it? So having a policy and having the right amount of data, I believe these are fundamental to, coming up with effective strategies to deal with the housing deficits in any country. It's just unfortunate that in many developing countries, data is a big problem, and the governments, for sometimes people say that they just don't want to be transparent, and so they wouldn't invest in processes or in instruments that will, bring transparency into these markets. Yeah, so usually we operate in this opaque space, and we formulate policies that are not data driven. You get it? And that also accounts for the reason why we are unable to deliver enough to support our citizens.
Yes.
Yeah. So housing policy and data, very fundamental.
One of the things I would have realized in preparing for this, discourse this afternoon is that approximately 56% of your population consists of youth.
Yeah.
How do you describe the access to the different opportunities to be able to, afford homes among that cohort of the society?
Indeed. As I indicated, just about 90%, that's 90%, just about 10% or even less than that, yes, of the entire population can afford the cheapest developer-built housing unit on the market. And the vast majority of the youth cannot afford even the cheapest developer-built unit. Yeah.
Mm. At this time, I'd turn over to the participants. Are there any questions, any comments that you guys would love to share? And I mean, one of the things I would have realized to Dr. Hierman is that you would have mentioned the utilization of public-private partnerships, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I recall that that also is part of a whole neoliberal approach toward housing. But
Yeah.
based on what you have seen thus far happening and taking place in Ghana, is there any real benefit to it? And the reason I ask it is this. Some of the houses are the units that you would have displayed a while ago. The cost or the price of those units actually work out to be a lot cheaper than the same units of a similar size in our, in our Jamaican context. So I'm wondering, is it that there is perhaps some greater benefit that your country would have been experiencing, or is it that there are things that we have not considered in our approach to our partnerships?
Okay, so apart from the government providing loans at concessionary rates to the developers, one other reason for the high cost of houses in Ghana is that we tend to import a greater portion of the materials we use in construction. And given that the cedi keeps depreciating against the dollar, you have, the case where these items or building materials are brought in at a very high cost. And so through the PPP, the government is also considering some sort of tax exemption on the importation of these materials, just so that the final prices for consumers would be lower than if these taxes were charged on these imported items. Yeah, and so I think looking at these mechanisms, this approach, this sort of PPP approach seems to be yielding better results than a situation where the government leaves the market to operate on its own. Just that, yeah. So basically, I think the PPP intervention is generating some good results, and we are looking forward to seeing more of that.
Okay, we have a question from a participant. His name is Mr. Sadiq Hines, and he's asking, what is the level of foreign investment in the Ghanaian housing industry?
Okay, that's interesting. I must say that I haven't seen any particular study that looks at foreign investment in the space. And so I'm unable to provide you with statistics per se. But then what I would say is that to a large extent, we have some foreign interest in that space, largely in the luxury housing segment. Yeah, so the high-end market in particular, you find that there are a lot of foreign interest in that space. Yeah.
Because I would have, in preparing I would have realized that, I would have read, I don't remember the source, that you cannot drive for more than 500 meters in Accra without seeing some sign advertising a luxury apartment complex. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because the experts purchase these properties to lease them.
Exactly.
And why it's interesting is that this tends to be the case as well in our Jamaican context, because while the government's report will include these luxury apartments in the amount that they supply to the market on an annual basis, not many of those in need of houses can actually afford them. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so one test you can conduct if you are in Accra, or when you are in Accra, is to drive through the streets in the evenings. And you realize that many of these luxury apartments are actually empty. You only find lights in just a few of them. Yeah. Meanwhile, housing deficit is increasing. And so There's a need for some intervention, especially in terms of how to utilize the resources that come into these markets.
And I mean, I'm sure the participants can agree that the description you gave of, what you would see when you drive through Accra at nights is similar to driving through a lot of these areas in Kingston. The units are present, but a lot of them are empty. And I think that speaks to some sense of a misguided approach to supplying the need for housing. We have a question here as well, Dr. Hierman, that asks, do you think that the chieftaincy system can play a role in the uptake of housing developed from PPPs? And before you answer, I'd love for you to describe to us what the chieftaincy system is.
That's interesting. So in Ghana, about 80% of all lands are owned by stools, or let me put it, by chiefs, okay? So about 80% of lands are owned by the chiefs. Now, the situation in Ghana in terms of land administration and ownership, it's not very different from what you find in many developing countries. So you have a situation where it's very difficult for people to demonstrate ownership of lands they paid monies for. Why? Because it is very inefficient, or it is very difficult, cumbersome to register land in Ghana. And in many cases, you find that many of the lands you would attempt to buy have already been sold to other people. So you have the problem of multiple sales of land in here. And the chiefs are largely blamed for this. You get it? And so one way or the other, access to cheap land has also become one of the problems to housing delivery in Ghana. In fact, most developers will tell you that they have to buy the same land more than 2 times, sometimes more than 2 times, before they can get title to these lands, because you have to buy it from multiple people who have already paid money for this land. And so that eventually increases the cost of delivering housing in Ghana. And so I think, yes, the chiefs certainly have a role to play in this PPP arrangements, because through them we can assemble large parcels of land for development. And of course, if the PPP is lucrative enough, I think that many of these chiefs will be interested in it one way or the other. It's just that to a large extent, many of them have sold a large part of their lands to many people, and it's very difficult for some of them to go and take over these lands again. And so that limits their participation one way or the other.
And I mean, I think that opens a whole nother can of worms for me, because instantly, just based on listening to the comment you shared just now, my mind was brought back to land management systems, because living in Jamaica, we were once members of the Commonwealth, so I started to wonder about the impact of colonialism on your land management systems. Could you comment on that a bit for us?
Yes, I mean, of course. I mean, law plays a very big role in the development of countries, and certainly the colonial relics, in terms of the legal systems we have in place, also play a crucial role. To a large extent in Ghana, a lot of lands were owned customarily, as in by the chiefs. But then the colonial administration decided to set up a formal system without taking into account the large interest or the large tracts of land that are owned by the chiefs. So to a large extent, the chiefs were not involved. You get it, by virtue of the laws that were promulgated. And I mean, because they felt alienated, they also went about doing their own thing. And that has created a lot of problems. So yes, some of the problems we see in the land administration system can be attributed to the legal systems we inherited from the colonial masters. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Are there any other comments or questions from our participants this evening? Well, there being none at this time. Dr. Hiaiman, I have had the pleasure of interacting with you on a topic of which I am very passionate about. It's interesting to note that while concluding my studies at the University of Technology, in the program of land economy, you know, I would have had the privilege of conducting a study with my mates on the ways in which public-private partnerships can facilitate the delivery of affordable housing in Jamaica. And so when Dr. Bill reached out to me and extended the opportunity to moderate this evening's program, I relished at the thought of it. And I can say that on behalf of my colleagues, participants, and other guests here this evening, the interaction was indeed fruitful. And we are thankful that you would have been able to take time out of your rest schedule, you know, especially at this time while the world is in a pandemic, to share with us about an issue that, you know, is of global concern. Another thing that, you know, stood out to me, of course, is the fact that you would have been considered to be a housing specialist, having attained a great level of success and exposure to the demands of the challenge of housing around the world. And I am sure that the encounter speaking to somebody of a older age would have been a lot more different, you know, and it was easy. I'm trying to say it was so easy to correspond with you on this topic. And for this, we are indeed grateful and thankful. We do look forward to interacting with you on this platform, perhaps in the near future, and all being well, perhaps another time in person at the auspices of the University of Technology of Jamaica. Thank you very much, Dr. Gant.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Dr. Beal, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Reed, and thank you very much, Ken, for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. It was quite eye-opening, to say the least, and we look forward to further partnership with you. It's really appreciated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So have a good night now, because I know it's night time for you.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Attendees, thank you very much, and have a good evening as well, and take care.